Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live broadcast, 21 CFR Part 11, Data Integrity for On Line TOC Instrumentation, presented by Tony Harrison, a Senior Marketing Manager at Beckman Coulter. I'm Susie Valdez of LabRoots, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We're delighted to bring you this educational web seminar presented by LabRoots and sponsored by Beckman Coulter. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that this event is interactive. We encourage you to participate by submitting as many questions as you want at any time you want during this presentation. Just click on that green Q&A button located at the lower left of your presentation window and type your questions into the box that appear on the screen. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of this presentation. Also, please notice that you are viewing this presentation in a slide window. To enlarge that window, just click on the screen icon located at the lower right. If you have any trouble seeing or hearing this presentation, please click on the support button at the top right of the presentation window or use that Q&A button to let us know you're having a problem. Without further ado, I'd like to now introduce our presenter, Tony Harrison. Mr. Harrison held the convenorship of the ISO Working Group revising ISO 14698 Part 1 and Part 2 for microbial control in clean rooms and was the UK subject matter expert to the ISO Working Group who issued the 2015 revised versions of the ISO 14644 Part 1 and Part 2 documents for clean room classification at the heart of the aseptic manufacturing chapters of both the European GMP and the USA CGMP documents. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical and electronic engineering and is employed by Beckman Coulter Life Sciences as a senior marketing manager. Experienced in water system TOC conductivity and ozone analysis and clean room environmental monitoring as well as particle characterization, Mr. Harrison has spent the last 15 years in applied metrology for the pharmaceutical and healthcare manufacturing industries. Prior to that, he worked for the companies providing process control automation solutions for manufacturing industries. Mr. Harrison was a joint editor of the ISPE Guide to Ozone Sanitation for Pharmaceutical Water Systems and was also the chief editor of PHSS Best Practice Guide for Clean Room Monitoring. He's a well-known international speaker and has provided educational seminars on TOC, liquid particle counting, ozone sanitation for water systems, and clean room monitoring in UK, France, Italy, India, Malaysia, China, USA, Scandinavia, Ireland, Hungary, Switzerland, Indonesia, Belgium, Greece, Switzerland, Turkey, Egypt, Denmark, Poland, and Italy, and most recently, South Africa and Colombia. Welcome, Mr. Harrison. Please, we would love to hear your presentation.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hello, and welcome to this short presentation on the FDA data integrity for online water for injection analyzers. My name's Tony Harrison, and I work for Beckman Coulter, the manufacturer of the Untitled online TOC and conductivity analyzers. A recent report highlighted that around 79% of the FDA's 483 warning letters issued in the 2016 period to the pharmaceutical industry cited deficiencies in their data integrity. Despite guidance from the FDA, TOC monitoring remains an intensely manual process with many opportunities for human error to create gaps and errors in the data. In their 21 CFR Part 11 guidance, the FDA have given recommendations on what good data integrity looks like, and this presentation explains their advice in the context of current TOC monitoring practices and shows how the FDA guidance can be applied to improve data integrity. So today's agenda will last somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes, so not a long session today. I'll touch on the history of the 21 CFR Part 11 guidance from the FDA and also dispel a couple of misconceptions that may surprise you. I'll talk about the increasing importance of online TOC and conductivity, in particular in the light of the changes to the European Pharmacopoeia chapter on water for injection. I'll also take a look at the ALCOA guidance from the FDA, explain what that is, and also how ALCOA and water for injection quality monitoring work together. Finally, I'll explain the ALCOA compliance solution from Beckman Coulter. So let's take a look at what guidance the FDA gives on this topic and dispel some common misconceptions. In 1997, in the face of pressure by the pharmaceutical industry to move away from paper-based records and to electronic record keeping, the FDA issued their original 21 CFR Part 11 guidance document on best practice for using electronic records. However, the pharmaceutical industry was dismayed that the advantages or apparent advantages of electronic record keeping appeared to be outweighed by the hugely burdensome requirements imposed by this guidance, and there was a lot of pushback against the FDA and their advice. The FDA realized that the pharmaceutical industry were taking their guidance as all-encompassing, and, recognizing the need for clarity, they issued further guidance in 2003, effectively limiting the scope of the 21 CFR Part 11 rule to those systems that are either directly storing records covered by the FDA regulations or those that are submitted to the FDA under the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act and the Public Health Services Act. The FDA's 2003 document provided detailed descriptions of those systems where 21 CFR Part 11 should be strictly applied and dispelled some common misconceptions that may surprise you. The first common misconception is around the use of PDF file type for electronic records. Many people I speak to get concerned about the fact that a PDF document could be edited deliberately to hide some sort of quality issue. But that's not the concept that the FDA were trying to put across. In their 2003 guidance, the FDA sought to make it clear that the 21 CFR Part 11 rule was not written to try to prevent criminal activity. It was written to avoid manufacturers accidentally losing or not being able to read electronic records retrospectively. Many interpret the rule as enforcing encrypted file formats or formats that cannot be deliberately edited. This is not the intention. Just as with paper records, the intention is that the records should be kept safe and secure so that they can be retrieved when required in the future. Again, just as with paper records, it's not the format of the record that the FDA is concerned about. It is the way they are stored to prevent accidental corruption of the information contained in the record or loss of the record itself. For example, electronic records stored in some proprietary format in an archive that only works on a computer running Windows XP are unlikely to be accessible in 10 years' time, when it will be almost impossible to find a computer that can still run Windows XP. To prevent such mistakes, the FDA actually recommends electronic file formats that are designed to be readable on many different electronic platforms. One such type that the FDA lists as a recommended is PDF, which can be read on Windows, Apple, Android, etc., etc. Electronic records stored in PDF format are far more likely to be readable in 10 years' time. That being said, the archive where the PDF files are kept should have controlled access to prevent accidental or deliberate changes or deletion of the PDF files. The second common misconception is that all computers and devices used on a pharmaceutical production facility need to comply fully with the 21 CFR Part 11 ruling. In their 2003 guidance, the FDA go to great lengths to explain that the only computer that needs to comply with the 21 CFR Part 11 ruling is the one where the electronic records are stored. They even go on to point out that if the final records archived and used to demonstrate batch quality to the FDA are stored in paper format, then the 21 CFR Part 11 rule does not apply to any computer, even to the computer used to generate the paper records in the first place. i.e., if the final record is kept in paper format and not electronic format, then the 21 CFR Part 11 rule does not apply. So now let's take a look at why online TOC analyzers have taken on an increased importance. In September of 2004, the FDA issued their Process Analytical Technology Guidance, encouraging the pharmaceutical industry to change their reliance on the final product testing and to employ more online process monitoring in an attempt to get a better process understanding and process control, leading to improved right first-time quality results. Online monitoring, particularly for TOC and conductivity, have taken on an even greater significance since the European Pharmacopoeia adopted its revised monograph on water for injection in March of 2016, allowing for the first time the generation of water for injection from reverse osmosis. The working group responsible for advising the European Directorate on their new water for injection monograph gave a warning that reverse osmosis may not be as robust as stills, and they encouraged a focus on online TOC and conductivity monitoring as early warning indicators of potential reverse osmosis integrity breaches. So now let's take a look at what other guidance the FDA gives on the topic of quality control records and data integrity. In their 2003 document on the implementation of their 21 CFR Part 11 data integrity rule, the FDA used the acronym ALCOA, where they define good data integrity practice as creating records that are attributable to the technician carrying out the testing, are legible, are created contemporaneously, and they are the original record and they are accurate. In this case, attributable means that the record should include an electronic signature to link them to the technician who did the test. They should also include a label stating where the sample was taken, and of course the date and time it was taken. The record, of course, is required to be legible, and that implies that handwritten records are not acceptable. The FDA goes on to suggest that electronic records should be stored in a format that is open and can be read on many computing formats so that it will be accessible and readable for years to come. As I mentioned a moment ago, the FDA recommends typical formats such as PDF. They also include formats such as XML and SGML. Now we come to the C in ALCOA. In this context, the word contemporaneously implies that the electronic records should be created at the time that the sample is measured, implying that manual transcription of paper records is not good practice, and that collating paper records and then manually transcribing them into electronic format at a later date is definitely not good practice either. Naturally, there is a danger with every transcription of test results from one form to another of making errors. Even scanning multiple paper records into electronic format runs the risk of duplication or missed scans. So the FDA recommends that the electronic record should be the original record created when the test was completed. Obviously, manually transcribed records are the riskiest, attracting the biggest opportunity for human error. Finally, the last A in ALCOA. Naturally, the electronic record should be accurate. This implies that the process for capturing these electronic records should be robust, i.e. manual calculations and manual data entry where opportunities for human error exist should be avoided. So let's take a look at the FDA 21 CFR Part 11 guidance in the context of water for injection monitoring instrumentation. The FDA mandates 4 water quality attributes for purified water and water for injection: inorganic contaminants, total organic carbon, endotoxins, and microbial colony-forming units. As I mentioned earlier, the FDA encouraged online process monitoring for quality control in their PAT initiative. At the same time, the expectations for the amount of quality information is increasing, and in many cases, the responsibility for collecting this data is passing to production staff. A recent report indicates that 79% of the FDA's 483 warning letters issued in 2016 cite data integrity. Poor data integrity may lead the FDA to call for a product recall. "20 years after the original FDA 21 CFR Part 11 guidance was issued, industry remains focused on ensuring the integrity of the final record. However, many processes leading up to the creation of the electronic record itself remain intensely manual and paper-based, leading to the opportunity for people to make errors in the creation of the electronic record or even to leave gaps in the data. There are many manual SOP steps to be followed in the typical water monitoring process. Values for certified calibration standards and system suitability kits are manually entered, inviting human error and mistyping. Pass-fail reports have to be manually calculated, and finally the electronic record is created by photocopying the manual calculations and manually typing the records into the system. Quality control data integrity, of course, is of vital importance, and the FDA could trigger a product recall if deficiencies are discovered in data records. Following data errors, the normal response is to initiate retraining for the water for injection monitoring team. However, the industry itself and the FDA is gradually coming to the conclusion that this does not solve the problem. It merely treats the symptoms for a short while until human error starts to creep in again, and that the correct way forward is to automate this monitoring program to remove the human errors and make the whole process more robust. Now let's take a look at the current water analyzer practices in the light of the FDA ALCOA guidance. There are many manual steps in the typical process, and usually the paper record does not contain an electronic signature, so it's not attributable to the technician. Manual, handwritten pass-fail calculations may not be legible, and electronic records are certainly not contemporaneously created through this manual process. There is a great risk that the accuracy may be impacted as values for certified standards are manually typed in, both for calibration and system suitability, inviting human error and mistyping. And pass-fail reports have to be manually calculated. And finally, the electronic record itself is created by manually transcribing the results into the system. So what can be done to provide an ALCOA compliant solution for online monitoring of water for injection systems? Fortunately, an ALCOA compliant solution exists. The Anatel PAT, TOC, and conductivity analyzer from Beckman Coulter automates all the SOPs, eliminating manual data entry and calculations, and creates an electronic record straight from the analyzer. Signatures are attributable and controlled by the site IT team using Microsoft's Active Directory controls. The record is legible, being one of the recommended formats from the FDA, i.e. PDF. The record is contemporaneously created, and it's the original record and is transmitted via Ethernet to the site's own secure server where the final records are kept. The SOPs for calibration and system suitability are built in and automated, There's no manual data entry, as the analyzer reads the certified values from standards bottles using RFID technology. This collapses the workflow and removes all the manual steps, thus reducing the opportunities for human error and making the record accurate. Now, listeners, today you should be receiving right now an invitation to register to download the associated white paper with for this presentation. So if you'd like to see that, please reply yes, and you should get the white paper. So that concludes my talk today. Do we have any questions that I can answer for you?
Thank you so much, Mr. Harrison, for that informative presentation. We will now start that live Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, please do so now. Just click on the green Q&A button at the lower left of your presentation window and type that question into the box that appears on your screen. Click the send button, and we'll answer as many questions as we have time for. So let's go ahead and get started with our questions. We have some questions coming in already from our audience members. Mr. Harrison, PDF files can be altered. How do I know if the file has been adulterated?
Sure. Now, that's a concern a lot of people have. And as I mentioned, it's just as with paper records, it's not so much the file format, it's how you look after the files that's important. So in the first instance, of course, it should be kept in a secure data archive with passwords, lockout, and all that sort of good stuff that 21 CFR calls for. Now, having said that, if somebody was to go in and edit a PDF file, it's very easy to see if the file has been tampered with by going into the properties of that file, because in the properties it tells you the date it was created and the time it was created. And then if it's been edited, it tells you the date it was edited and the time it was edited. So clearly, if those dates and times are different, then somebody has adulterated the PDF file.
Great, thank you so much. Here's our next question coming in. How do I avoid errors when entering the calibration solution certified TOC values into the Untitled TOC analyser?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's an area for common errors when people are manually typing in the certified values of the calibration solutions. But in fact, with the Untitled PAT 700, that's not a requirement. The standards bottles themselves have a small RFID tag on them, which contains all of their certified value, the use by date, etc., etc. And when you load the bottles into the calibration bay on the PAT 700, the PAT 700 automatically reads the data from those standards and loads it in. So there's no manual data entry at all with this analyzer, and no manual calculations either, as it calculates a pass-fail automatically for the user.
Great, thank you. We have some wonderful questions coming in. Here's another question from an audience member. Does someone have to physically go to the Untitled TOC analyzer to export the PDF file?
No, actually, you can set it so it automatically exports the files on a daily basis at a fixed time. So it collates the data, it collates the electronic records in the analyzer, and then every day at a certain fixed time sends them out across the Ethernet network to the secure server on the site.
Thank you. We have one more question. Can you download a record in PDF directly from the instrument at the point of us?
Yes, indeed. So the analyzer does have a USB port on it. So if you were to do manual grab sample analysis or even a calibration, the PDF files can be created instantly and exported via USB. So you can collect it from the analyzer if you choose to do so.
Wonderful. We don't have any more questions coming in at this time. Oh, actually, here comes one more. They're coming in as we go. Could you summarize, if you are using the printed PDF as our raw data and wet signatures, how does the FDA look at that again?
Okay, so, sorry, can you repeat that one? I'm not quite sure I understood it. Say again, please.
Sure. Could you summarize, if we are using the printed PDF as our raw data and wet signatures, how the FDA looks at that again?
All right, okay. So if I understand correctly, you've taken the PDF file and you've printed it out into paper format. So your raw data, your final record is a paper printout which you're manually signing. So effectively that's the same as any paper record. And if you read the 2003 guidance from the FDA, it actually says that if that is the final record and that's the record you go to when the FDA call upon you to produce the evidence for batch quality, and you never go back to the electronic record at all, then in theory 21 CFR Part 11 doesn't comply at all. That's what the FDA say in their guidance. If it's a paper record you use, the computer or the system that you use to generate that paper record doesn't need to comply with 21 CFR Part 11 as long as you never go back and then rely on the electronic records again.
Great, thank you. We have a very captivating audience because several questions just came in. This is exciting. Is PDF good to make recalculations and or trending?
So trending, yeah, that's not good. Of course, what most people that I've seen do is that they have a final record for the test itself, but trending is typically done, from what I've seen, even in either in a LIMS system, a laboratory information management system, or in the case of this type of instrumentation, it's typically done in on the SCADA system, the control system for the factory. Or it is possible with this analyzer to export an Excel file or Excel readable file. So you could take the data out in Excel and load it into an Excel spreadsheet. And of course you keep the electronic record, the PDF record, separately as the file to demonstrate batch release, only going back to it if you're called to produce that data.
Thank you. And I think you just answered this question, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. Does the Anatel keep the original record in the instrument memory, or is it removed from exporting, upon exporting?
Yeah, so there's two ways you can do this. Is that the Anatel PAT700 does have username and password security on it in multiple levels. So you can apply the normal 21 CFR Part 11 security to the analyzer itself, should you wish to keep the record in the database inside the analyzer. But what I've seen a lot of people doing is that once they've exported the file electronically from the PAT700, to avoid any confusion over where the last file is and which one it is, and is it in the analyzer or is it in the secure archive, they set the analyzer to automatically delete the file. So you can program it so it automatically exports the PDF files at a set time every day and goes back in and wipes the files from the analyzer. So it just removes that ambiguity as to where the final record is kept.
Great. Here's an important question. Does the Anatel TOC tell me when something is wrong, or do I have to check the PDF output?
Okay, so you can. So if you're concerned, for instance, that it was making TOC or conductivity measurements and that were out of or past your alert level or your alarm level, so you needed to know about them, the Anatel can tell you this. It can be configured so that it automatically sends a digital signal to your PLC or SCADA system to tell you there's an alarm, effectively, or an alert on the PAT700. So you don't have to wait for the PDF file to come out to you. It'll tell you. It can also be configured to do the same thing on the analog outputs. The 4 to 20 milliamp outputs can warn you with an alarm as well.
Thank you. We have a comprehensive set of questions coming in, and we have time for a few more. What validation evidence is provided to the customer?
Yeah, okay. So as part of the standard validation package, and of course you may wish to add to this, each site has its own rules and regulations that it follows. But as standard, the analyzer validation package that we carry out by our service organization validates that the data exported over Ethernet in PDF format to the customer's server matches the data that's actually on the analyzer. So we do an export and then we check that the data matches to make sure that we've validated that this export is, one, works, and two, is accurate to the original analysis.
Thank you for that. And can the PDF be installed to PAT 700 analyzers manufactured before 2010?
Yes, there is a software upgrade procedure. I was speaking to somebody doing that very thing this week with two older PAT 700s, and it works successfully. Yes, so there's a standard procedure, and the software and firmware is available from our technical support group.
Wonderful. And here's a similar question on that same topic. Network systems can go down. Does the PAT 700 confirm that the data has been written to the archive location prior to deleting the information on the instrument?
Yeah, for sure. So what the PAT 700 does is it at the allotted time when you've configured it to export the data, it tries to make the export. If for some reason, as you say, the network is down and it cannot successfully make that data export, then it keeps retrying until the network comes back up. Of course, with a modern Ethernet network system, those sorts of gaps are quite unusual and typically temporary. And the data, the PDF, is sent using TCP/IP, which is a very resilient network protocol anyway. But yes, it will hold on, it holds the data, and it waits until there's been a successful export, and then it sends it out actually using file transfer protocol, FTP. So there's a handshake involved with the remote server. So until it receives that handshake, it will not delete the file.
Great. We appreciate all these wonderful incoming questions. We have one more question coming in. Does the system control prompt preventative maintenance?
So yes, it would do. There are the things that it's a very simple and robust analyzer. Really, it uses an ultraviolet light to do the oxidization to calculate the TOC. So the UV lamp is in fact the heart of the analyzer, and if something happens to that UV lamp, you're in danger of not being able to make TOC analyses. So what this analyzer actually has is a main and a standby UV lamp, which we measure the UV light coming out of the bulb. If the main UV lamp fails, it automatically brings in the reserve UV lamp. And to answer the question there, it would then prompt via digital output to the site PLC that there has been a switching of this UV lamp, and it should trigger really a routine planned maintenance call. So you don't need an emergency call out because the other secondary UV lamp should last for a good 9 to 12 months anyway. But it triggers the fact that you could do with scheduling at your earliest convenience, have a service call out.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Harrison, for this wonderful presentation you provided today. With no more questions coming in, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to provide for the audience?
No, thank you very much, everybody, for listening today, and I appreciate the interaction.
I'd also like to thank LabRoots for making today's educational webcast possible, and Beckman Coulter for being a sponsor today. Before we go, I want to let everyone know that today's webcast will be available for on-demand viewing through April 2018. You'll receive an email from LabRoots letting you know when the webcast will be available for replay. Please share that announcement with your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. That's all for now. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.